What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be continuing to break down tuning in Modern Warfare 2 now that it's actually very worthwhile to be doing this after the buffs. And in today's video, we're going to be focusing specifically on strafing, or aim down sight strafe speed. Now this characteristic can be really important for aggressively challenging enemies around corners. It offers a nice alternative to jump shots, but unfortunately in Modern Warfare 2, our aim down sight strafe speeds aren't very good relative to many other previous Call of Duty games out there. And when you also combine the fact that aim assist seems to be stronger than ever in Call of Duty, strafing just isn't quite as viable as it used to be. And this is one of the big reasons you tend to see people jump shotting corners more often than trying to strafe around a corner or simply sprint around a corner, for instance. The jump shots in this game are just far more effective than the nerfed strafe. Having said this, now that tuning has been buffed in many areas, I wanted to revisit aim walking movement speed and aim down sight strafe speed, and it turns out you can actually make some half-decent aim walking movement speed builds in this game that allow you to aggressively challenge people around corners, and as a result, I wanted to share the top 5 that I was able to build here. Keeping in mind, I tried to go for builds that are actually viable and versatile. I realize you can technically get faster aim walking movement speeds than this, but in order to do that, you often have to completely sacrifice all ability to control recoil, or you have to have like a super tiny magazine, for instance, that's just not very versatile. But without further ado, let's just hop right into the list here, and I'm going to start this off with the assault rifles, since they're obviously not going to be quite as good as SMGs. Those are going to be toward the top of my list. And the first one I want to share here is an ISO Hemlock strafe build, and with this we're using the RCOM S4 stock, the 1mW PEC laser, the RCQ7 barrel, the Sack and Tread 40 muzzle, and the Commando foregrip. Now it turns out when it comes to tuning for aim walking movement speed, on most guns and most attachments, you tend to be able to tune for this on your stock attachment, your barrel attachment, and your underbarrel attachment if you're using an angled foregrip, not a vertical foregrip. And that's why you are going to see all 3 of these whenever possible on these builds, and I'm always tuning to the optimal point for aim walking movement speed here. So you are going to see quite a consistent trend here with all of my strafe builds. As far as the other attachments outside of these, you could make some adjustments to better suit you and your playstyle. Like maybe you want to drop that 1mW PEC laser, for instance, and go with an optic or a different magazine or something like that. Just keep in mind though, if you use an attachment that harms your movement speed in any way, it may also be affecting your aim walking movement speed. And with this build, our aim walking movement speed without tuning these attachments is 2.91 meters per second, whereas once we tune it, it's all the way up to 3.25 meters per second now, which is very good for an assault rifle in this game. Now, let's have a look at what this looks like from the enemy's perspective. If you're just strafing back and forth, trying to dodge some shots while you're in a gunfight, this is what it looks like. You can see that you are moving reasonably fast back and forth. This may throw some people off target to some degree. Obviously, like a really good player is still going to be able to track you no problem, either with a controller or mouse and keyboard. But another thing I wanted to show is just how fast you can die when somebody strafes a corner with this particular build. And this is where the true power starts to shine, because you do gain a little bit of that peeker's advantage. And unless you anticipate this and you're pre-firing that corner, or at least pre-aiming that corner, there is a very low chance you'll be able to fight back effectively when somebody strafes around a corner with this build like this. So there we go, that's the first build with the ISO Hemlock, and that's actually the slowest build I'm sharing today. The next one I wanted to share is yet another assault rifle build, and this one is using the M4. Now with this, once again, we're using a barrel that gives us the best movement speed possible, and we're tuning for aim walking movement speed. We've got the Commando foregrip, tuned for aim walking movement speed, and we've also got the Demo D50 buffer tube on this. Now there is a stock attachment that helps with aim walking movement speed on the M4, but it turns out with the buffer tube, you actually get a better overall aim walking movement speed, even when you consider the fact that you can't tune this buffer tube. So that's why we're using this one. And also, yes, this does massively increase your recoil and everything, but with the combination of the Sack and Tread 40 and the Commando foregrip, you can definitely still control the recoil just fine, although it wouldn't be a really long range build, of course. But this is what allows us to get the best possible aim walking movement speed with this gun at 3.27 meters per second, which is just barely faster than the previous build I shared for you guys. And really, there's not too much extra to say about the M4. Now, let's move on to number 3 on the list, and from here on out, it's going to be all SMGs. The next one I wanted to share here is the Vaznev 9K strafe build. Now with this, we're using the CAS 1 381mm barrel, tuned for aim walking speed, the Commando foregrip, tuned for aim walking speed, the Atrazat stock, tuned for aim walking speed and aim walking steadiness. We've got the TrueTac grip on there, and then the Bruin cubic comp, or whichever muzzle you want to use on that. I realize a lot of people still like using the Bruin pendulum. For me, with the Vaznev, I do find the cubic comp to be a little bit better though. Now with this one, you can see a pretty big jump compared to the assault rifle builds. With tuning, we can get up to 3.95 meters per second with our ADS walking speed, which is very impressive. And when we look at that from a third-person perspective, you can see that now you'll actually be able to start to throw people off target. Even for reasonably decent players, if you catch them off guard with this, they will miss some shots sometimes due to this strafing. And that's not even mentioning strafing around corners for a kill. I actually went frame by frame and timed this. From the moment that you can start to see the character model to the moment you're dead, this was around 250 milliseconds, which is faster than most of the aim down sight times of most of the guns in the game, and just about as fast as the time to kill of most of the guns in this game, which is really crazy, and that means if the enemy isn't already pre-aimed, they've basically got no chance in that fight. So that's the Vaznev, and that's an incredible all-around strafing build with that gun. Now I want to move into number 2 on my list, which is actually the fastest aim-walking movement speed that I was able to build here, while still creating a build that's reasonably usable in other areas. And this is with the Fennec using the double tap mod, the FTAC 8.5-inch recon barrel, the FSS Sharkfin 90, and the Agile Assault 7 stock. All of these tuned for aim-walking speed and aim-walking steadiness whenever possible. I also threw on a Bruin Cubic comp here. And with this, we get an insane aim-walking movement speed at 4.27 meters per second. This is now starting to approach the aim-walking movement speeds we would have seen in some older Call of Duty games when combining with like the Stalker perk or with the stock attachment, for instance. And you can see here, it's definitely very fast and will be throwing people off target. But of course, unfortunately, this does limit us to using that double tap mod, which isn't a bad mod by any means. But that's really the key here to significantly boosting our overall movement speed for this. If you wanted to use the Fennec without the double tap mod, you can still get a great aim walking movement speed. It's just not going to be nearly as fast as this particular build. But then finally, for number 1 on my list here, I've actually got the PDSW 528 Strafe Build. And with this reason, the FTAC Series 9 14.5-inch barrel, the hollow extended stock, the GR33 light rail to help boost overall movement speed, and then I've got the Bruin Cubic comp as well as the 1 milliwatt Artemis laser. Now, when you tune for the best possible aim-walking movement speed with these attachments, we get a total aim-walking movement speed of 4.1 meters per second, which is a little bit slower than the previous build, but this is also a much more versatile build than the previous one, since that double tap mod on the Fennec will hold you back in many ways. Whereas with the PDSW, there's really nothing holding you back here. And with this, again, if you're strafing back and forth in a gunfight, you will absolutely throw a lot of people off target and perhaps dodge a few bullets here or there. And then additionally, when you strafe around a corner to challenge an enemy, there is very little time for them to react. And with that, that's finally going to wrap it up for the top 5 strafe builds that I was able to create in Modern Warfare 2 now that tuning has been very noticeably buffed. And I've got to say, well, I still find the base strafe speeds in this game to be a bit on the slow side, and I wouldn't mind seeing some improvements in that area. It's nice to see that we at least have the ability to have reasonably fast strafe speeds. However, you do kind of have to go all in on that when it comes to your attachments. So for those of you guys that like playing aggressively and aren't a big fan of having to jump shot around corners to effectively challenge people, try some of these builds out and you should be able to find quite a bit of success. And this is where I'd love to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First off, what do you guys think about the builds that I shared today? Were you surprised by just how fast you're able to strafe in Modern Warfare 2 as long as you're tuning it right? And second, what are your thoughts in general on strafe speeds in Modern Warfare 2? Do you agree with me? Do you think they are a little bit on the slow side by default? Do you think they could use a bit of a speed up? Or do you think they're just fine as they are? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.